Hi, everyone, and welcome to your risk assessment training. We are going to start by looking at the legal bits. We have a legal responsibility to follow the Health and Safety at Work Act. This is an umbrella legislation that covers different regulations that you may have heard about. Some of these are DSE or digital screen equipment, manual handling, electricity, management of health and safety, which means the way we manage health and safety, such as risk assessments or trainings, such as this one, and COSHH. These regulations give you more information about how to comply with the Act. So, what does the Act say? This Act is split into sections, but these are the key ones. Section 2 talks about the responsibilities of the employer, which in our case would be the university itself. They have to make sure they provide a safe place to work, clearly outline safe procedures on how to work. They need to provide suitable equipment that is safe to use. They must have adequate welfare arrangements. They must provide information, instructions, and training to ensure employees know how to use the equipment and understand how to keep themselves safe. They must maintain the equipment and replace this when needed. And finally, they must complete risk assessments. The next section talks about what we have to do as employees of the university. We have to cooperate with the employer and comply with statutory provisions. This means ensuring that we complete risk assessments when running events and ensure we are following all protocols and instructions to ensure we are as safe as possible. We have the responsibility of taking reasonable care of ourselves and others affected by our work. And finally, we have to report unsafe conditions to ensure that the university can act accordingly to fix this. While students aren't employees, you still have a responsibility to health and safety as event organisers. Part of this responsibility is cooperating with the university by creating your risk assessments, take care of the people that attend your events, and report unsafe conditions. On TV shows, you see how police need to prove that the individual or company is guilty. This is onus of proof. Under health and safety legislation, we have to prove that we are doing the right things. We do this by considering the hazards, identifying control measures, and outlining these through a risk assessment. Remember, if it isn't written down, it hasn't happened. It is also important that you are actually doing what you are writing down. Not following health and safety procedures can cost us highly. It can cost us money. It can delay your project if you don't submit your risk assessments on time. Your event will not go ahead. It can hit the news and your reputation can go down the pan. It can result in prosecution and even civil claims. But most importantly, it can hurt people. Let's talk about the difference between hazard, risk, and control measures. Hazard is the possibility or likelihood of something causing harm. In this case, the shark is swimming in the ocean is a hazard. A risk is the probability of harm occurring. In our example, swimming in the ocean with sharks is a risk. A control measure means putting things in place to prevent or reduce the risk. In our example, to prevent the risk, we would not swim in the water, and to reduce the risk, we would go in a cage that would protect us from the swimming shark. Reasonably practicable means what is reasonable to put in place as control measures compared to the hazard present. For example, if we are working in a lab with chemicals, we would want to put on protective goggles and a lab coat. If we are working somewhere like Porton Down, where they research the deadliest diseases, we would want to wear more protective gear, such as a hazmat suit and more protective goggles. Finally, if we are working with soap and cleaning materials, gloves and an apron would be sufficient. A risk assessment can go wrong if it's not completed by the person in actual control of the activities or by a person who doesn't know what the activity is or entails. It can go wrong if you don't consider all the people attending. You must account for all visitors, guest speakers, contractors, and even yourself, especially if you're planning a large setting up for the event. You can have the best risk assessment, but if you don't tell anyone about it, it's as if you hadn't written anything. Thinking it's not your job to be doing that as an event organizer, it is your responsibility to ensure it is as safe as possible. Whilst templates are a great starting point, they must be tailored to the needs of your event. You can forget steps of a job that you know too well. If you were to think about how you make a cup of tea, we first grab a mug, put a tea bag, put some boiling water from the kettle, stir for a second, and top it off with a splash of milk. However, when going about a risk assessment, we need to think beyond that. We need to ensure we are filling the kettle above the minimum line to ensure it doesn't boil dry, or checking that the kettle is plugged in properly to avoid causing an electrical fire. Last minute risk assessments may lead you to forget about hazards and doesn't allow you enough time to prepare for your event. Finally, a risk assessment can go wrong when you are concerned about the activities rather than the hazards themselves. In our shark example, this would mean focusing more on swimming in the sea over the shark that's swimming in it. Our first step to write a risk assessment is to identify our hazards. To do this, we can use information we've collected in the past, as well as things you've learned after hosting some events. It's important that you report any accidents or near misses, as this will help you understand what things you could change or what you can start implementing to ensure that doesn't happen again. Asking other staff members or student leaders that have experience delivering events can also be helpful. Volunteers supporting your event or people delivering events for the first time would have low competency because they lack experience. Always remember to give good briefings at the beginning of the event and explain to volunteers as well as your committee what the hazards are and what control measures should be implemented. This will help ensure that everyone is on the same page, and if something were to happen, everyone would know what to do. So what hazards could be present during your activities? Some of them can be manual handling, especially if you're moving furniture around the space. Noise might be something you'd like to consider, especially if you're planning on having music at your event. You should also consider slips and trips, especially when working with equipment that has wires. Electricity may also be a hazard present during your events. People could get electrical shocks, or if someone accidentally spills their drink on equipment, it could cause an electrical fire. No matter if your event is large or small, you should always think about crowd management. This includes how many people can fit safely in one room, considering that room capacities can vary depending on if you're planning on having your attendees sit or stand. Blocked fire exits are also something you should always take into consideration, ensuring that all your fire exits are always clear and easy to access in case an evacuation is needed. These are the common hazards for events, so when you're preparing your risk assessment, you will most likely be putting down all these hazards. Step 2 is assessing the risk, so understanding who can be hurt and how. When defining who can be hurt, think about the people who will be present at the event. Also think about yourselves, especially if you are planning on decorating the space or making changes to the space to ensure it's perfect for your event. You should also consider people with disabilities or accessibility requirements. Think about how to ensure they remain safe. Defining how they get hurt will also help you understand what you can do to keep people safe. For example, event organisers who are putting up decorations could fall off a ladder and potentially break a bone or severely hurt themselves. Similarly, if someone accidentally spills their drink and no one informs the people in the space, attendees could slip and hurt themselves. Once we've considered our hazards and how they can harm attendees, it's time to define what controls we put in place. We could eliminate the risk altogether. We could substitute it for something safer. For example, if we are having an event where we are planning to bring cupcakes, but we know that some of our attendees are celiac, we could substitute our usual flour for a gluten-free one to ensure they can safely eat our cupcakes. Engineering controls means guarding the hazard. We could also put administrative controls in place, which means outlining the way we do tasks. This can be done by providing training such as this one, writing risk assessments or giving safety briefings to your committee before the event starts to ensure everyone is on the same page regarding the measures you are putting in place, as well as what to do in the event of an emergency. Finally, you could think about personal protective equipment such as gloves, boots, lab coats, etc. Not all hazards can be controlled with PPE, so don't jump to this straight away. Step 4 is recording your findings. Write down everything you've come up with, including your hazards, who might be harmed and how, what you are doing to control the risks. Step 5 is to review. As you gain experience leading events, you'll be able to identify what works best for your events, what you could start implementing, and what simply doesn't work. Accidents and near misses may also push you to review and amend your risk assessments, so it's important you always record your findings. Please remember to submit an incident report form if there's an accident or near miss during your events. On the risk assessment section on Freshdesk, you'll be able to find a brief guide on how to write risk assessments, as well as an events checklist that will help you identify what may be present during your events. Whilst this checklist is not a mandatory part of your risk assessment, it is a great help to get started on your document. Furthermore, in this section, you will also be able to find the template that you must use to complete your risk assessment. We will now go through the form and how to complete this. The key thing to remember is, if the writing is in red, you will definitely need to fill it out. The first thing you will need to outline is the name of the event you're assessing. For example, RSU Film Night. Where it says the name of the assessor, please state your name and your role within the group. The date of the risk assessment is when you are writing the document. The date of the event is the date you are planning to host your event on. The description of your activity should clearly explain what your event is about. So you need to make sure you include all the information related to your event, include how many people you're expecting, where your event will take place, and what activities you run. The description you write is key. A poor description doesn't allow us to understand what's truly going to happen during an event. For example, fortnightly student night involving drinks and a game evening. Instead, a better description would provide us with further information on how many people to expect, where the events are taking place, and what activities will happen. A student events night is organised fortnightly for up to approximately 50 people. Drinks and snacks are served, which are supplied by, for example, the Hive. Typical events include movie nights in the David Bell Cinema, board games in the David Bell classroom, and outdoor picnics on campus. Some events will require decorations to be put up. With this complete description, we can start identifying the hazards present during our events. We'll need to think about layout, crowd management, access and egress, outdoor weather, electrical, slips, trips, food and preparation, and waste management. The first thing you'll need to write down in this section is the hazards that will be present in your event. Please match it with the number in the checklist above. Then provide a brief description as to how this hazard could impact your activities. After this, outline the initial risk rating. We'll go over this matrix later in the training, but please keep in mind that the initial risk rating must be higher than the residual rating. Next, you will need to outline all the control measures you will put in place to minimize the risks to your attendees. Finally, you will need to establish a residual risk rating after your controls are put in place. This needs to be lower than the initial risk rating. In the template we've created for you, you'll see that we've already identified a number of hazards and have provided you with a description of how these could impact your event. When completing your document, you will simply need to outline the control measures for the hazards we've already identified, as well as control measures for any additional hazards that may be present in your event. If you believe one of the pre-established hazards will not be present in your event, please do not delete this. Instead, simply give a brief explanation as to why that hazard is not applicable for your risk assessment. This section is unlikely to be used for your regular events, as the control measures you put in place should be enough to cover your event. However, if you think that there are control measures that are not easily implemented by yourself and need additional help, or if you are planning a large event, please get in touch with us to discuss this further. After outlining your control measures, the person writing the risk assessment will need to sign off the risk assessment. Only people who have completed this training and completely understand the activities you'll be carrying out are able to sign off a risk assessment. Finally, when signing your document, please make sure you put an image of your signature instead of just your type name. This matrix will help you determine both your initial and residual ratings. To select a number, think about how likely it is for people to get harmed and how severe the harm could be. Don't get hung up on the numbers and remember that not all hazards will result in severe harm. After your control measures are put in place, your residual rating should be within the green zone. To finalise this training, let's go over some key things you need to remember. No matter if you say that you're doing something to reduce the risk at your event, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. Large-scale events require their own risk assessment. Please have a chat with us so we can discuss this further. Remember, hazard is something that could potentially cause harm. Risk is the probability of harm occurring when exposed to a hazard. If anything goes wrong during one of your events, don't forget to report it through our incident report form. Incidents and near misses must be reported within 24 hours of this happening. Don't be afraid of the form and don't hesitate to ask questions. We are here to help you every step of the way. When writing your risk assessment, remember to complete your description in as much detail as possible. And finally, don't forget that learning how to write a good risk assessment is a skill that you can add to your CV. Thank you for coming to this training.